Hi everyone, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So I'm back again with another session on our DevOps series for Scrum Master. So today I'll be talking about Maven. Okay, so the agenda would be to understand why do we need a build tool, then example of one of the build tool, which is Mavens. There are other tool as well. You have and Gradle and Maven. So I'll be talking about Maven, which is used for Java project mainly. Then we'll understand life cycles of Maven, some basic commands, and important concept of Maven, which is your local repository and your remote repository. So this is going to be more of a theory session. Practically, we'll take up Maven when we'll be done with Jenkins. Okay, so after completing the session on Jenkins, we'll be doing a small demo using Maven, Git, etc. That time you'll see hands-on lab on the Maven. Okay, and then I'll talk about what I'm going to cover next in the series. Okay, so why do we need build tools, right? So if you would have seen developers, they code, right? And in Java, .NET, all those things, right? But your computer, it understands only machine language, which is like your zeros and ones. Okay, so you need a tool which helps you to convert those source code. When we say source code, it's the code which you've written in any programmatic language, be it Java, JavaScript, etc. Okay. Now that needs to be converted into a form which can be understood by your computer. Okay. So which we call it as compiling. Okay. So build tools help you to compile your code. Okay. Second is the dependencies, right? You'll have a lot of dependencies. It is recommended that you should learn to reuse things rather reinventing the wheel. It's advisable that you reuse stuff. For example, if we talk about automation, okay, so if I have to write a script, okay, so maybe I use Selenium with Java, right? So Selenium, I need a dependency of Selenium. Okay, after that I want some reporting. Okay, so you can add those reporting tools. You want some testing framework, for example, JUnit. So for all those things, one way is you download the dependency and use it in your project. Okay, but what happens if there is any update to those dependencies? You again have to download those libraries and add in the project. But with build tool, these managing the dependencies and their upgrade is very easy. Okay, so this I'll show you when actually we'll create one Maven project. Then yes, you've converted your code from source code to machine code. You've managed the dependency. You also want to run the test cases. Nowadays you would hear a concept of continuous integration, continuous delivery and deployment. So the idea is we want to merge our changes as soon as they are done, and we want to run automated test cases so that you get a quick feedback. So build tool helps you with those as well. And finally, once you've tested your code, it's stable, you want to deploy it to the servers, right? So for that also you'll need a tool. So one of the tools which we are going to study is Maven. Okay, so Maven is a build automation tool. Also, it's a project management tool because it helps you to manage your project as a whole. If we didn't had Maven, so what would be the problem statement? Everybody who is contributing to the code may go ahead and create their own folder structure or can have their own naming conventions, right? But with Maven, we are following a proper convention. Okay, there would be something known as your test folder, there would be something known as your main folder, you'll have resource, you have target, etc. So all these things you can manage through Maven. Now, in previous slide, we understood that Maven helps you in dependency management, which is like it helps you get those third-party libraries which you need for your development work. Now, there are two ways by which you can fetch your dependencies. Okay, so we call something as a local repository and a remote repository. Yeah. So what happens whenever you add certain dependency in your project and you run a specific command in Maven? So the Maven first looks for that dependency on your system. Okay, there's this folder which gets created when you download Maven. It's .m2. Okay, so that contains all the third-party libraries which you have downloaded from the remote repository. So whenever you perform any action, okay, or any command, Maven command, so if that requires any third-party dependencies, first your system looks into this local repository, which is under .m2 folder. Okay, if it doesn't find under .m2, it would look no. So before .m2, it would be like, okay, where you've written your code, right? The work station which has all your code, etc. Or you can say in short, you are writing your code in some ID. So it would first look into that project structure if the dependency is available. Okay, all the dependencies, there would be a folder named as dependencies or libraries where you have all those dependencies. If it's not there, it would look into .m2 folder. Okay, and if it doesn't find on .m2, it downloads it from the remote repository. So it would download it from remote repository and it would put it on in your local repository, which is .m2. So this way what you are doing is, every time when you require any dependency, you don't go to remote repository and save some time. You first always look into your local repository. Next is, it helps you to create right folder structures. So what I was talking about, right? So you'll have something called as your source folder. Okay, then source, here you'll have something called as test and something called as main. So all the code development work is here, and on this code, whatever test cases you need to run, it would be placed here. Okay, yeah. And the repository part also you understood. You have something called as remote repository and you've got something as local repository. What is the location of local repository? It is .m2 folder on your local system. Okay, and it helps you to provide project information. Yes, when you build your project, so if certain logs get created, documents get created, all those information you can get from Maven as well. Yeah, let me just stop the annotation part. Okay, so Maven has a life cycle. Okay, so when we say life cycle, it refers to the action which is performed. Okay, so the first life cycle of a Maven is validate. So the idea of the validate life cycle is to find out if your project structure is correct, if the project has all the right dependencies. As I was mentioning, if it has Selenium, my project is using Selenium, right, or JUnit or TestNG. So does your project has the required dependency? If not, then that needs to be downloaded. Okay, next life cycle is compile, which is converting your source code to your machine code, right? So if you talk about Java, it converts all your .java files to .class files and store it into target or classes folder. Test, as the name suggests, on this code you want to run your test cases. This could be unit test cases, integration test cases, etc. Once the testing is done, it meets certain criteria. Now that code needs to be converted into a distributable format, which is the .jar file and war file. So jar is like Java archive files. So what exactly you can consider this? Maybe I'm creating one project, you are creating a different project, but your project has dependency on my project. So one way is I give you all my code, or second way is I convert it into a library or .jar file and I share that jar file with you for your usage. Okay, so this jar file you can create using package lifecycle. Then integration test, which is like it runs the test. You write some test cases to ensure, okay, two modules are working properly. Yeah. Then verify, which could be a health check. Yeah, verify the project meets the quality standard. Maybe you've written that the test coverage should be 80%, there should be no code smells. Okay, if you want to understand more about code smell, we have a session on the same topic in CareersTalk channel named as Tech Depth. Okay, so there I have covered in detail about code smell, etc., and the tools which are used for finding out those code smell. Yeah. Then install. Again, the steps install the all the package code to local Maven repository, which is like self-explanatory. And deploy finally the code which is packaged. You deploy it to the remote repository, or which could be used by other developers. So you'll see in your organization, like as a Scrum Master, you'll be hearing these things, right? My service has dependencies on the other team's work, etc. So what exactly they do? Like once those services are built, then they are shared with your, what do you say, team to take care of further work, right? So all those things are done by these build tools, okay, which helps you to package the code, deploy the code, verify, etc. Okay. So now some of the basic command, okay. For example, MVN clean, okay. So what MVN clean does is, like, when remember this step wherein we were saying that when you compile your code, it gets converted from .java to class, and it is stored in target and class folder. So when you do ambient clean, anything which is present in the target folder gets deleted. Okay. Compile, yeah. So these are like your life cycle. Yeah. And how do you initiate these life cycle? Using commands like ambient clean, ambient compile, which compiles the source code of the project, then test, okay, which runs the test, package. So all these are command which corresponds to these life cycle. Okay, package, install, deploy, etc. Now this is sample Maven project. So here you'll see the project structure, right? So you have the name of your project. You'll have source. Under source, you will have main and test. Okay. Now under main, you will have Java. Again, under test, you have Java, and then here you have those folder structures. Okay. Yeah. So if you see these two, I copied it from the Maven site as well. So you see app.java, which is like your source code. Okay. And on this, whatever you want to run, you have created another file which is known as app test java, and you write all the test cases corresponding to this. Yeah. So let me show you the some sample what do you say, libraries, or how actually you add the dependencies. So a very important file in Maven, as Maven follows page object model form. Okay, this is a very important file in Maven. Whenever you create a Maven project, you'll see this gets generated. Now what all this contains: this would contain dependencies, any plugin. Also, it's, you can specify those criterias which I was mentioning you, that what should be my pass percentage. Yeah. And you can specify some plugins. So for example, you are using some you can add dependencies or plugins related to remote generations. Yeah. So let me just quickly show you what exactly I have to do. Show you. Let me just take you on to the Maven. Okay, official documentation. So the best way to learn, as I always say, see, whatever I am telling you, it is not in depth, right? Because if I go in depth, it would take a lot of time. But the idea of this series is to just give you a overview of some of the common DevOps tool, right? For example, we went through Linux, then we went through Git. Now we are going through Maven, and a few more things which we'll cover in this series is Jenkins, Docker, and Ansible. Okay, okay, and each of them are a topic in itself, right? But we cannot cover all those things in for a beginner level. Okay, probably if people like this series, the beginner series, we might plan on to some intermediate and advanced level series, wherein we'll do more deep dive on this topic. But for now, if somebody wants to have an overview of some of the basic tools and want to practice and understand some terminologies, then this series would be more than enough. Okay. So yeah, this is the site. Here you find all the documentation, all the plugins. Okay, right? What all plugin it has, then repositories. Okay, which I was telling you, right? Let's see. For example, uh, I want to add Selenium. Okay, uh, dependency on my project. So how I'll search Maven dependency for Selenium. Okay, so you'll go here. Yeah, right. Pick any of the and what you need to do, you just need to copy this. Okay, where we have to copy this in our pom.xml. Okay, so when you will build the project, it would look for Selenium, right? So for the first time, the Selenium package or libraries won't be there on your local machine. So you'll take it from the remote repository of Maven. From there, it would put it on your local. Okay. Now, as I was telling you, see if there is any update. Currently, it's 4.4, but for example, it becomes 4.5. So what would you do if we didn't had Maven or any build tools, right? So you'll go to that site, you'll download the jar file and add it in your project. But here, what you have to do, you just have to go to the pom.xml file and update the versions. Okay, so from 4.54, it would change it to 4.5. Okay, sometime what happens is uh, somehow uh, the local repository, okay, it has certain versions, and you are trying to update it, right? So you'll see the update doesn't come on your local, and it would always be picking your old code. So in those cases, like you figured out everything and you found out that the issue is not resolving, or some class file you're not able to resolve, what you should do is you should delete that dependency from .m2 folder in your local repository, so that it gets the latest from your remote repository. So majorly issue which you will find with Maven is this: if there is any discrepancy between your local repository and remote repository. Okay. Also, since we are discussing this topic, I would also like to highlight that what happened now, company, what they do is, as I was telling you, there are two sprint teams. Okay, so as a sprint team, if you've created certain thing and it could be reusable for other team, right? So one way is what you'll do, you'll create a jar file, war file, whatever packageable code it is, and you can put it on remote repository of Maven. Or second is, now people have started using a dependency management tool, which is like Nexus, etc. So what you do is, now there would be three levels. First, whatever dependency you're trying to look for, it would be searched in .m2. If it is not there in .m2, it would be looked into Nexus. And if it's not there in these Nexus, etc., it would look at the remote repository of Maven. Okay, so now in companies you will see that for dependency management, etc., they rely heavily on Nexus. Okay, not onto the remote Maven repository. So because anything you put it on remote repository, it would be accessible to everyone. But if there is any code or changes which you have done, you want it to be used by your internal team, then your these dependency management tools like Nexus, etc., could be useful. Yeah. So let me just quickly recap of what we have studied today. Yeah. So what is build tool? What is Maven? Life cycle, some command repositories, and we also talked about Nexus, which helps you in the dependency management at the organization level. So anything which you put on Nexus, it is remote but available only for employees in the current organization. Okay. Now, what is next? So I'll be talking about Ansible, which is a configuration management tool. So let me just give you a small overview what exactly you mean by a configuration management tool. So configuration of a system could be memory, CPU, some packages, etc. So what do you do with those configuration? You update it, delete it, or install it. Okay. So if you've got 10 or 15s or 15 or if you have 10 15 server, okay, so manually you have to log in. It could be Ubuntu machine, it could be Linux, it could be what do you say, Windows. Yeah, so you have to manually log in and do the updates, right? That's one way. Second way is automate this process of update. So there are tools like Ansible, Chef. Okay, sorry guys for that background noise. Yeah, so you have tools like Ansible, Chef, Puppet. So they help you in performing these IT tasks. Yeah, so I'll be talking about Ansible in detail. We'll study about what is Ansible, on what mechanism it works, a little bit architecture of Ansible, and then various ways by which you can perform these IT tasks. Like you have got ad hoc, module, and playbook, right? So we'll cover that in our next session. Okay, hope you guys like it. And again, I'll reiterate, this is a series for beginners. Okay, if you want anything in detail, you can always add your comment in the video below. Okay, so that we'll understand that there are few folks who are looking for intermediate or advanced level on these topics. Okay. So thank you guys. See you in our next session on Ansible. Bye.